1.
Good morning, everyone. Betty here with your Cuppo Capital. I'm really excited about today's Cuppo Capital because, as you can see, we have a couple of special guests today joining me. Unfortunately, Becca Bailey, our community engagement liaison, is out of the office today on some well-deserved vacation. But I'm really excited to have these two ladies with us today. So we have some special guests, as I mentioned. The lady sitting to what's on my left, our executive director, Sherry Collins, who deserves no introduction needed. So welcome, Sherry.
Hi.
We're really excited to have you today at Cuppo Capital. This is going to be a lot of fun. And then our next special guest her name's Nikki, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But before I do, I just want to give you a reason why I have Nikki joining us today, and the reason why we had to cancel our last Cuppo Capital a couple weeks ago. And the reason why is because I have moved to Washington, D.C. So I have my special mug today that says my heart is in Arizona and my heart is now in Washington, D.C. So Nikki actually has joined the commission, and she will be replacing me as the Director of Public Policy and Community Relations. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Sukup, and this is my name sign. I've been off to a great start working with Betty and working with Sherry. I'm looking forward to this conversation today. And Betty is going to tell us what's happening in Arizona at the Capitol. And we'll get an update on policy, and we'll hear from Sherry as well. So, cheers.
Cheers. Welcome. We're so excited to have you, Nikki. And for all those who are watching us today, so I'm going to be working with Nikki on the transition. Since, as I did mention, I have moved to Washington, D.C. I'm still with the commission until the end of legislative session. So you can't get rid of me quite yet. I'm here. I'm committed to fighting and advocating for the deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind communities and having full and equal communication access down at the Capitol. I'm just going to be doing it via the computer instead of in person. So I appreciate, Nikki, you joining us. And, I hope that at the end you'll come back in and, ask us any questions if you have any.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. All right, Sherry, you ready to get into this?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. I started my day off early at 6 a.m. This is my third cup of coffee today with a shot of espresso mixed in.
Ooh.
So I'm feeling really like a good, strong cup of coffee today. I am, I get along really well with coffee. I'm super simple, no sugar, just black, no cream, no nothing. I just like a straight shot of caffeine. So I am ready to go. Let's get started, Betty.
All right. Awesome. Let's do it. So do you have any questions for me? What do you want to know that happened down at the Capitol last couple of weeks?
I don't know where to start. There's so much going on, right? But, let's talk about what happened. One of our legislatures was
Censored.
was censored. And her name was Wendy Rogers. What's going on? What's happening with this? It's like all in the news.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's talk about and it's just so we're clear, it's censure. So it's Censure. And it sounds very similar to censor, and it kind of is. It's just what censure in the political world means is that it can have different meanings. It can mean it's a slap on the wrist, like a wag, a finger wag, like don't do that again. Or it could have consequences, meaning like they're stripped of their committees. And so what happened is a couple of weeks ago, Wendy Rogers, who's from LD6, which is up in northern Arizona. So she serves Prescott, or parts of Prescott, parts of Yavapai County, Flagstaff, Coconino County. She had tweeted out some stuff that was deemed inappropriate, deemed very, and then she escalated in her tweet to be more violent. That's what the criticism was, that she started making threats towards other members in her party. And so the censure, what that did was it was almost unanimous. 3 legislators voted no against censuring her, but essentially they said, you need to stop your behavior. Like we're putting you on notice that we're not going to tolerate this from one of our fellow lawmakers. And so that happened, and it kind of paused everything to deal with that, and then went straight back to business. So she wasn't kicked out of any committees. She wasn't, thrown out of her duly elected position, but she was formally reprimanded on the Senate floor. But I do have to say this, though. Technically, it did not actually reprimand her. Her name was never mentioned in the motion. It was the senator from LD6. So that's something that I think is very interesting.
That is interesting. Because people can easily misunderstand through media. So I think that's great. And thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Now, getting to what happened last week and the issues that had come up during last week with different committees, or what happened maybe on the floor, what's been going on? What came up?
Yeah. So it was kind of crazy. I was driving to DC and my phone is blowing up. I'm getting alerts. I'm getting text messages. Folks are saying like, you need to go watch committee hearings. You need to watch floor. So fortunately, I had stops along my way. And so I pull up to kind of see what was happening. And I'm glad I did, because last week in particular, so not this week, but the week past, there was a bill that was around candidate signatures. So candidates running for office have to collect so many signatures per district. So, and it's a formula based off of how many registered voters there are in that area. And so they have to get a proportion of that. But with the redistricting that happened because of the census, this bill was going through because the folks running for office need to know how many signatures they have to collect to get on the ballot. So does that make sense? So I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues related to the voting process and the application process and all that kind of stuff. There's just a lot of confusion. So why is it important that we're focusing on the district voting and the numbers? Why does that matter in your own district where you live?
That's actually a really great question. So if you've ever been at the grocery store, right, or gone to the library and you have people standing there saying, sign my petition, that is because they are trying to get on the ballot. And in order to get on the ballot, you have to have a certain amount of signatures of qualified registered voters from your district. So what that means is that the voters are saying, I think you're worthy enough of getting on the ballot. And then then the next step is then the voters making the decision of whether or not they want to elect that person to represent them. So that is a critical piece. And then every 10 years, because of the census, all the legislative and congressional districts get redrawn. So I could be an LD5 today as an elected official, but once the redistricting happens, my house, because I have to be registered, and live in my district, could now move me into LD6. So I need those new numbers so I can go and be on the ballot for LD6. So this is a really important bill for candidates who want to be on the ballot. But in that bill, there was a little piece of language around what's called PCs, precinct committeemen. And that is a political party designation. So every political party has these PCs. And the PCs go out and help do the work of the party. So if you're a Republican PC, you go out and do the work of the Republican Party in your district, and the same for the Democratic Party, Green Party, all that. Well, this little piece of a nugget in this bill, through the elections of PCs from the counties to the political parties. And the bill, because it was just like 2 to 3 sentences in this bill, no one saw it, no one read it. And everyone voted on this bill. I mean, this bill for redistricting passed unanimously. But then the PCs were like, wait a minute. So we're not going to be elected through the county ballot. The political parties have to now run their own elections. So then everything just got crazy. And then, so that's actually been taking up a lot of time. Government pretty much came to a halt because of this one issue. So it was kind of like, whoa, because the political parties, if this stayed the way it was, they would be forced to run their own elections. So PCs, they don't want to. They don't want to spend the money to do that. And so they wanted it to go back to the way it currently is, meaning is that PCs are elected just on the same ballot as any other position that you're voting for. So it was like this political,
Yeah. That really caused a lot of confusion from the public. They were like, what does that mean? What's going on? So because that's such a hot topic, let's talk more about it, because it is important for all of the voters here in Arizona. So how are the legislators going to fix this problem? What is their plan?
So this week they actually did what's called a striker. Everyone knows that I talk a lot about zombie bills. So they did a striker, took a zombie bill and fixed that piece of the language. So now it went back to the way it already was. So precinct committeemen will be back on the ballot through a county election. However, there was an emergency clause, meaning that you needed 3/4 of the full legislative body to vote to repeal that emergency clause. So they're still trying to figure out now, how are they going to fix that piece? Because they need an emergency clause and they don't have 3/4 vote, because the Democrats, and this is very interesting, the Democrats do not elect their PCs, only the Republicans. The Democratic Party appoints their PCs. So this is a Republican issue in the eyes of the Democrats, and they're saying, we don't have to vote to repeal this. So now everyone's trying to figure out, what do we do? What do we do? Because they need that emergency clause.
And just for clarification, when you're talking about 3/4 of a vote being required, does that include the House and the Senate together? So 90 elected legislators, or 3/4 of which body are you talking about?
So that's a great question, Sherry. It's 3/4 of both. So you need 3/4 in the House and then 3/4 in the Senate. So both in each, not total, but both.
So that's something that we all have to watch for next week, or see what happens, right? Because it's really going to be important, right, buddy?
It is, and I think that's something that a lot of folks don't. I think generally in the community, we don't understand the roles of PCs, and PCs do serve a pretty vital role in respect to political parties. They are very instrumental on getting candidates in their party on the ballot. They, they're the ones who make votes on whether or not they're gonna, censure a member of their party. John McCain got censured all the time when he was alive. And it's the PCs and the people in the party that do that. So the PCs, while they don't hold, a lot of power in the overall infrastructure of how we vote and then the electoral system, but they have their own piece to how the party runs. So if you identify as a Democrat, or if you identify as a Republican or a Libertarian, the PCs are they're the ground level. So they really do hold some level of importance as it relates to the party, and they hold a lot of power in the party. So this is actually a bigger deal, I think, than people realize. But it doesn't affect you and I on a day-to-day basis, right? Because it doesn't have to do with how much gas we're paying. It doesn't mean it's impacting our groceries, but it is important to know, to be an educated voter.
Yeah, I think this topic is very important. I know we have a list of things, but I want to ask you, I want to take the time to walk through this, because with elections coming up, I want it to be clear and people to understand how the voting process actually works. So let's get back to this PC, to the PCs, and how can a person in their own district, so where they're living, become involved. So suppose I myself want to be involved, because the role of the PC is more of, my definition, mobilized, like they're trying to mobilize the voters, right? And engage them, get them involved, and get them to vote in their district, right? What would you say to that?
Yeah, definitely. They very much do that. So if anyone, they do mobilize. They're like the grassroots level of any election. I mean, they really are. And so if someone is looking to get involved in that more grassroots level, either party, every district has a meeting. So if you're from LD24, you can go to LD24 Democratic Party meetings. You can meet the PCs, just as the same if you're a Republican. You can go to LD11 meetings, Republican meetings. And here's also another little known thing. Even if you live in a predominant red or blue district, there's still the opposite party still has, an LD meeting. So for example, LD 11, that is a strong Republican district, but they still have LD 11 Democrats. And so they meet monthly or weekly or whatever. And they talk about how they're going to, get out the vote. How are they going to get people to sign candidate petitions, volunteer, go be that person that's going to stand in front of the library and be like, help us collect these signatures so we can get the candidate we want on the ballot. And you can just Google that, whatever your district is, and find out when they meet.
Awesome. Okay, we are almost out of time, and I know that we have a few more things. So the thing that I want to jump into for my next question is just these rumors about potential special session coming. Yeah. Why? What's with the rumors?
Oh my God, the rumors, they never stop. It was like rumor 2 weeks ago, we're going to have a special session. Rumor still that we're going to have it forthcoming. Okay, so one, the rumor is that they need to fix the PC issue, that emergency clause. So they're looking at holding a special session for that, because essentially why they're thinking about that is they're, to be blunt, they're playing with the rules. So you can, because general effective date of any bill is 90 days after signee died. Well, that applies to whichever session you're in. So if they need to fix this PC issue, we have to go into special session right now. So then the 90-day effective date would be way before the regular session effective date, because we don't know when we're going to be done with this session, right? We could be going into June like we did last year. So that can't happen because that issue has to be resolved before the primary. And the primary is the first week of August. So that's one of the reasons why we have to get in a special session. And then the other one, and I know we talked about this in our policy updates, is that repeal and replace the flat tax, the progressive flat tax. So that's a huge issue. And the reason why they're looking at doing that is because of the success of the voter initiative getting on the ballot. They collected enough signatures. I think that's the theme of today's Cup of Capital is signatures. Signatures from the voters are so important.
Yes.
Because you play a role, voters. You play a role. And so that's the other reason why they're looking at a special session.
I mean, really, the signatures, everyone's vote matters.
Yeah.
Period, right? I think it's just so important. It doesn't matter what your political stance is or who you're related to. It doesn't matter. Your vote matters. I always emphasize that to everyone that I talk to. If you don't understand what is on the ballot, ask. Yeah. Ask your neighbor. Ask your family, ask your friends, somebody that shares the same beliefs, ask them. We don't know everything, right? We're supposed to ask to learn. So I can't emphasize that enough.
Go
ahead.
So one of the things though is I think is even more important obviously registering vote, we got to vote, but you have to register to vote. You can't vote and you can't sign a petition. You cannot sign an initiative or a petition for a candidate unless you're a registered voter. So as a registered voter, you get the power to sign someone's candidate petition, sign a voter initiative petition, and to vote. So if there's so much power in registering to vote. And so that's why I just wanted to just add that in there. Go register to vote if you're not. It's so important.
It's our privilege. It's our privilege. And I sign it like this as though I'm signing honor, because as a US citizen and as a taxpayer, it is a privilege that I have the right to vote. I have the right to voice what my opinions are. That I think is just summarizes that, right? That topic.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why I love my job as the director of this agency, because, our influence with policy and system change, we still have a lot of work to do to remove barriers, but your vote matters. That's all I'm going to tell you. If I could brainwash that into you. Okay, I'm actually going to invite Nikki back on screen with us. And, just as your first time joining us, and she's been on the job for a month now. So, Nikki, what do you think of all the things going on? Did you have any thoughts or any questions?
Thank you so much, Sherry. It's so important to be a part of the process, to watch and learn as the session goes. And so I like what you said about ask your neighbor, ask your friend, ask anyone who you may know. That is just another way to continue to stay engaged. And in your area, in your part of the state, I agree that it is so important to register. I echo that. And when I register or when I sign any petition, I actually didn't realize that someone had to be registered in order to sign a petition. So that's an important thing to know. That's an important thing to consider. And then earlier, when you were talking about redistricting, that also has an influence on who my representatives in my district may be. And also it affects who is running against each other. In the beginning of today's Couple Capital, we're talking about Wendy Rogers, and it was interesting that this occurred after a redistricting incident where someone was also challenging Kelly Townsend. And I know that there was another hot issue there as well that we're keeping an eye on. So it's very interesting when redistricting occurs, and there are a lot of things to keep an eye on and a lot of different moving parts. So it is important to have these conversations.
It's true.
Now, if I wanted to stay involved, what can I do? Is there a specific news channel I can be following? Is there information that is there a way that I can get information from the commission?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nikki. We love it. You join us every other Friday for our Capo Capital. Perfect. And then also our legislative updates. We send those out weekly, right? So we give the week's recap of what happened on certain bills that we're following. I think that's a great question. We also will do alerts and updates through that. So if there's a bill, for example, that we need, our community to contact their legislators about, we send out those updates through our legislative alerts too. Or if we want to kill a bill, let's say that there's a bill that's just going to be horrendous for our community, sign up for our legislative updates, because that's how you're going to be in the know. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Well, thank you, Betty, for inviting us to today's Cup of Capital. And we are just going to continue this conversation. We could keep talking about it all day long. It's been wonderful. Thank you for the Friday fun and another large cup of coffee.
Thank you guys, for everyone, for Nikki, Sherry, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And everyone out there in the YouTube world, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks at your next Cup of Capital.